Well, good evening, everybody. How's it going? Happy New Year. It's 2025, and I figured I'd do kind of the last sort of wrap of things that I read this week, and kind of maybe we'll see what we talk about. I don't know yet. So been keeping the book as always. I need to go and grab myself a new one. I did quite a lot of reading this week, so I made it up to 480. The first time in quite a few years I haven't hit my goal of 500. It's funny, Rasa and I had a chat this after. Pardon me, Rasa and I had a chat this afternoon, and we ended up talking about just kind of the year and stuff that I've read. And she said something that kind of stuck with me, was that there wasn't, when she started thinking about what she's read, she has been doing a little notebook where she does sketches of stuff that she's been reading. She doesn't do a drawing for every single thing she's read, but for ones that kind of catch her attention, she'll do a drawing about it. And she said going through there wasn't a ton that stood out to her from this year. And it's funny, I'll have to go through this. There's some titles that stand out for me. I'm sure that there's things that I'm missing, but it does feel a little different than previous years, as much as, not saying I haven't read good stuff this year. It feels like there's been previous years where the amount of kind of quality stuff that I read was much higher. So I'll be interested to kind of go through this again and have a look to see what kind of like my top reads of the year are. So we're going to try to have a chat this Sunday as well, too, probably over on her channel. And one of those is, because we had a chat this afternoon, there's more than likely not going to be very much that we've read between now and then. So we're probably going to do kind of a conversation where we talk about some of the titles that stood out to us. I'm going to reach out to her again, probably tomorrow or the next day, just to kind of, unless she's watching this on the replay, but just to kind of maybe that's what we do on Sunday. We talk about the reads that were our favorites from the year and maybe talk about them a little bit more. So look for that one coming probably, like I said, on Sunday on Rasa's channel. In the meantime, there was a couple of sales around town. I didn't go too crazy. I bought one quote unquote bigger book. So 204 Comics had a sale going on. And a couple of weeks ago when I went to visit them, he was pressing and cleaning a bunch of original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the Mirage. So he had the first couple of issues that looked like, I think that he said they were first prints that he was kind of cleaning up and things. So most of those sold. There was one on the wall, a first printing of issue number 6. I managed to get my hands on because he had a sale. I think it was $15 off of what he had it listed as. So number 6 is one of them that I was missing. I've got a bunch of the original run early issues. Obviously, they're not even close to first printings. They're well into the later printings for those first issues, which is why they were so cheap. So this will be the first early issue that I have that's a first printing, which is pretty exciting. I've read all of this stuff already because this is collected in the first comics editions that I have. I got the first 3 books, I think. So this is material that I've read, but it's really nice to have those, have the single issues as well too. My Ninja Turtles run of single issues has dramatically grown in the last year or so. Yeah, it smells like a beautiful old comic, just that smell that we all love. So that's pretty cool. From 1986 to have a copy of that sucker. There was another sale at a different comic shop. He had a sale where he was going off of the US prices. For graphic novels, it was 25% off of the US price. So if it came to $20 US, he was charging you $20 Canadian. He was just doing a direct translation that way. So that was pretty great. So I managed to grab a couple of things. Where did I put them? I grabbed myself this Be Very Afraid of Nanako Inuki, a collection of short stories by Kaneko Inuki. I'm about, I don't know, 3 stories into it, and it's not really doing too much for me. I can't say that I'm loving it. Generally, for horror manga, I'm all over it. They're not awful stories, but they are, I don't know, like this story, for example, is about a voodoo doll. So I don't know if it's necessarily the topics that aren't really that engrossing to me. The one that was kind of maybe the most disturbing was this second story. What the heck is it called here? Um, Bukita-kun. And it's about this little girl who I think is like 5 or 6 years old, and she wants to grow up so quickly, and she ends up basically following this much older boy around, saying that she'll be his girlfriend, and this boy kind of ends up falling in love with her or something. It's a bizarre little story. I can't say I fully understood all of it, but it's this sort of like sort of a take on a stalker. So this boy has the ability to rapidly age her. He was doing experiments on turtles, so he gives her some of the serum, and it's going to age her. Her mind will still sort of be youthful, but she's going to kind of physically age, which is just again a creepy concept. This guy wanting this young girl to rapidly age, so that of course she ends up kind of feeling herself and getting out there, and deciding that, hey, I'm going to go and kind of embrace life, everything that I've wanted to do. But of course, the aging process doesn't stop. And at one point, she kind of, as she's trying to get the attention of some young men, this is what she looks like. So it's aged her to such a degree that she's a walking corpse. Yeah. So, I mean, it has moments, but overall, I'm not kind of blown away by this. It took me, I don't know, it took me like 2 sittings just to read the first 3 short stories there. So I don't know how this is going to sit. I'll give it a fair shake and finish it off, but it's not amazing me. I found an issue of Headlopper, I think for like $1 or $2. I don't have any. I think I might have 1 issue of Headlopper somewhere, unless I traded away a long time ago. But I don't have much of this. I don't know it very well. I kind of started reading the first few pages, and it really reminded me of kind of Adventure Time, not necessarily in style, but kind of like it feels to be that sort of. This is the middle of a D&D session where everything is kind of culminating to a big fight scene. So it sort of had that feel. And I think because of the cartooniness, that's what reminded me of something like Adventure Time. On a local note, there is a pinup in the back here by a local cartoonist. Ainsley Sturko does a pinup in here. So this is Ainsley's pinup in this issue. Her and her partner, a long time ago, I talked about some Dernier Cri books that I got in. It was through her husband that I bought those books from. So the both of them, they have this a company, and I'm blanking on what it's called. They were doing Sofubi for a little while. They were doing kind of designer toys. They got into that game for a little bit. I don't know if they still do it now, but she kind of designed the characters, and then they would get them manufactured and sculpted and stuff. So I've got a couple of stuff that they brought in, nothing of theirs, but for a while there, they were bringing in some Sofubi as well, too, from Japan. And there was a local small business that was carrying that stuff. So that was cool to see local in there. Picked up a book called The Klondike from Drawn and Quarterly by an artist, Zach Wharton. I think this is Zach's first work. This was 2017, I think it said. Let's see here. No, even earlier than that. 2011 is when this one came out. It's sort of in that vein of, so I mean, first of all, it's about the Klondike. So it's about up north, way up north. So it has that kind of feel for me right away, which is what drew me to it. It also has a bit of a feeling of kind of like a Louis Riel, because these are apparently characters from history. And the same thing, it's broken up into a bunch of short stories focusing on different characters that it takes a little bit for you to see how they kind of intertwine, all of these characters' lives intertwine with each other. I'm probably, I don't know how many pages in, for 50 pages in or something, maybe a little more, 60 pages in, and it hasn't kind of hit me yet. It's interesting enough, but I find the little snippets of the stories are a little too brief in these chapters. So it feels like the story starts to get going a little bit, and then it abruptly ends, and then we get into another chapter. Again, I've got a long way to go in this book, so chances are it'll tie together somewhat, but it's one of those things of sometimes if it doesn't kind of snap you into attention right away, it's hard to kind of get you to come back. So actually, I'm way more than 50 pages in because I'm all the way over here. So I'm probably like a good 70 pages into it. So yeah, another one I will kind of keep on with. The art looks pretty nice. I don't know anything about this artist at all. But Drawn and Quarterly is always a company worth checking out. So that was that one. One that wasn't on sale that I got myself anyway was Mad Woman of the Sacred Heart by Jodorowsky and Mobius from Humanoids. It's one that I've always been curious about. The main character in this one is sort of a Jodorowsky. It's sort of not quite autobiographical, but I mean, he really is the main character in this. In this one, he plays this professor of philosophy whose life is kind of falling apart around him. His wife is leaving him. He's very, so far, he's very hands-off with the world. He feels like the kind of character who, like he's pulled from an Alfred Hitchcock movie or something, that the environment is going to lead him through these moments in his life as opposed to him taking control of things. I imagine that's going to change. I'm only like 20 or 30 pages into it, so I imagine it's going to get a whole lot different. But it looks beautiful. It's a great kind of oversized edition. It's nice to see some Mobius, and like I've said with Corbin, it's also nice to read something by this duo that I've never read before. I don't remember hearing too much about this book ever from anybody. I don't even remember hearing about it on Earl Grey's channel. But yeah, I will for sure report back once I've read it. And then the other stuff I picked up is going to be in this stack of comics that I read, because there's a bunch of stuff that I read. So why don't we just start with that? Why don't we start with this one? I don't know how I missed it. I was sure that it was on my pull list, but somehow I missed book 3 of Friday. And I was just thinking about it the other day that I think I'm a bit fucked. I don't know if I'm ever going to get my hands on it. Lo and behold, there it was at his shop. He had 4 copies of it, actually. So we've talked about these before. This is from Panel Syndicate, that eventually got put out in these kind of really nice, smaller graphic novels. I think each one holds 3 issues. Yeah, because this last one is issues 7 to 9. I've really been loving it. This was a book that kind of brought me back to Brubaker. I felt like I was kind of falling out of love with Brubaker's writing after some of the stuff, especially after the Reckless books that I had read. Those really did nothing for me. So I feel like I dropped off of Brubaker for a while there. I've since kind of come around and read, what was it, Night Business? Is that what it was called? That I really dug. And I love this Friday. I've really loved it. So that said, this is the final book in the kind of trilogy. It may not be the last material that we get of this character in this world, but that's it for now. And I will say that I think the important part of reading this is you have to read this as if you are that preteen reading Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys to kind of really give it its fair shake. I'll just say this: time travel. So I think that's always a bit of a tricky subject to deal with. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't kind of make an audible groan when I saw sort of the way things were going. Now, all of that said, though, it's still a really enjoyable read. Marcos Martin's art is beautiful in this. Really, really good. And then it sort of salvaged it. I don't want to show you too much because I don't want to accidentally reveal spoilers. Because like I said, this is the end of it. So this does wrap up the story. The final kind of few pages kind of brought me back in a pretty big way. I think it ended very well. And I do hope that they revisit this world, because I really enjoyed reading this stuff. It was just a lot of fun. It was really good, kind of escapist mystery / fantasy / I don't know what, YA. So really nice work on this one. I'd recommend it. But again, really just go into it with your eyes open, that this isn't a Brubaker that's going to be like his other stuff that's maybe geared more towards, even if there's F-bombs dropped in here every once in a while and she smokes cigarettes, that doesn't mean that it's going to be kind of treading the same territory that some of his other darker material goes to. So yeah, that's that trilogy finish. I'm really, really glad that they put these out. So in the discount bins, there was a couple of things that caught my attention in one bin, and I grabbed them all. Maybe I'll start with this one over here, because when I brought it to the counter to pay for it, he said, some Winnipeg weirdness. So this is called Zombie Planet. This is issue number 1 of Zombie Planet by a local guy named Lucas Fair this is the one that's from 2017. I looked him up already. I found his Instagram. Pardon me. So it was the cover that kind of caught my attention anyway. When I did a quick flip through it, it looked interesting enough. It sort of has this sci-fi horror type of theme. And in this, we have sort of a horror host that we meet off of the top of it. And then he kind of goes into a story that is just basically a fight scene. And it's with some kind of narration that is it doesn't feel attached to anything that's going on. It doesn't really feel like there's too much of a point with this issue, or at least not one that I could discern. But it was still a fun read. I love finding local stuff especially, but I love finding oddball artists with comics that nobody has ever heard about and nobody will ever be asking for ever again. But it's super cool to have that local connection too. So I had a quick look on his Instagram. I didn't see anything as far as new comics. I did see some of his art. He's got an interesting style, but it's one of those things that it sort of leans too much on digital art at times. It feels too kind of crisp, like that host character at the beginning just felt very crisp, whereas this stuff feels a little more kind of worn in, but even this feels a little too sharp. You know what I mean? Like a story like this, I would love to see in black and white, and with that amazing black and white 80s scratchy line work. But they're not bad pages whatsoever. And again, he made a goddamn comic, so that gets props no matter what I think of it. He actually made something, which is fucking amazing. So I haven't looked for him yet in any of our comic groups. I'm curious if he's around on Facebook at all and lurking in our groups. So the other ones that I found that caught my attention was this. First off, Heart of Weirdness. It's basically a sci-fi Apocalypse Now by a guy named Alchemical. Instead of alchemical, Alchemical. Clever. As I was reading this, I kept wanting it to, why can't this just be Brandon Graham doing this? So the backstory with Mr. Alchemical, I believe with Mr. Alchemical, or it might have been the writer Jacob. Let me have a look here. 1 second. No, I'm pretty sure it's this artist, Alchemical. I did a little bit of reading up on this next thing we're going to talk about, which also has this artist, and apparently highly influenced by Island, the anthology that Brandon Graham was responsible for over at Image Comics, and decided to make comics That's a standout panel. I like that kind of shadowing over his eyes from his hand. I think that's pretty sharp. But I mean, it's uncanny how much this looks like Brandon Graham, and it's one of those things. Rasa and I were talking about it, where while I can see influences of Mobius in Brandon Graham's art, I also very much see Brandon Graham. Whereas I look at this and I only see Brandon Graham. You know, I don't really see his own style, which is like, it's not that this style isn't good. It's just that I've seen it done better. So it makes it kind of a bummer to read a little bit of territory that you're not getting a distinctive voice. And if there's one thing I love from my comics is a creator with a very distinctive voice. Yeah, so this issue, I think it's only a one shot. I think it was self-published. Yeah, there's a Hearts of Weirdness Tumblr page on the back. I don't see any info. Oh yeah, there is that. There is a pinup by my man, Mr. Ian Laurie, who did, what the hell were those comics? Wait, Where Did Emily Go? Or something like that, or whatever it was. Do I have it right here? And then Emily Was Gone is what it is. So this is Ian Laurie doing this comic that I adored and loved his style. So nice to see a pinup by him in the back of this one. So I don't know how easy or difficult this is to find. If you're interested in this sort of thing and you can find it for $1, which is what I think I paid for it, I think it's probably worth it for $1, but I wouldn't necessarily go out of your way to hunt that down. What I would suggest you keep an eye out for is this K-Rel's Ring. So I think there was 3 issues. CLZ only has 2 issues listed, numbers 1 and 2. But when I was looking online, there was, I think, a third one that was also, this is all Kickstarter issues. Once the 3 issues came out, they were approached by a small publishing company. I can't remember if it was like Blue Moon or Blue Planet or something like that. And then they collected the whole K-Rel's Ring in one collected edition. I don't know if there was extra material in it or not. This was such an interesting book. This first one, while also sporting, blanking on his name for the love of God, James Stokoe, of course, while sporting a very fine James Stokoe cover. It's filled with, well, not filled, it's got a few other artists. Al Carmichael is back in here. Simon Roy is in here. Brandon Graham is in here. Farrell Dalrymple is in here. And then some other names that I'm not too familiar with. Aaron Conley, Philia Bratukin, and Grim Wilkins are the other names that I don't know. So while I was reading this, the reason I kind of did a bit of digging online for it right away is that I assumed that this was an adaptation of a science fiction novel. Focus. What's going on there? Hello? There we go. I thought that this was a adaptation of a science fiction novel, and I really was interested to try to maybe get my hands on the sci-fi novel, because the little chunks that we were seeing here, the way we were introduced to this world, this is Al Carmichael at the beginning here, by the way. It felt there was some really good nuggets of ideas within this first issue that I really wanted to find some more. Here's some Simon Roy. I would love to have read a longer form story, only to find out that it wasn't based on a novel. This is kind of how it was intended. This story was going to be this expansive universe, and this was a chunk of it. Man, oh man, I really wish that more time was taken on this. And I really wish these individual parts in this first issue were stretched out, because there's some really interesting ideas in here. There's some very cool moments in this that, again, just get touched on and then left behind to kind of progress the story. It was also one where I really had to pay attention. I had hit the vape pen once or twice, so that was a little easier to do because I was really in the zone of really getting sucked into this. So yeah, I don't know if it was my drug-addled brain talking to me or whether it was really good, but here's the Brandon Graham stuff. I was pretty taken by this. It had a lot of flaws, and I wish that there was more. But for what it is, I kind of really dug it. I do wish there was more, though. So that's kind of the first issue. There was a second issue here in the bin as well. I think these cost me like $2 a piece or something like that. They were pretty cheap. So this one just has Elka Michael doing the art, and then Shannon W. Lentz is the writer and the letterer. The letterer. And there's 3 short stories in this one. The third short story was probably my favorite thing out of all 2 of these issues, actually. It was a really interesting take on, it's a father and daughter. The wife / mother has died. They're heavily grieving, thinking about, are they ever going to, trying to talk to his daughter about, am I ever going to see mommy again? That classic kind of thing, because it's this sci-fi world. Hey, maybe there is a way that we can talk to your mother again. And then that idea is explored and comes to an ending that I didn't expect. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I sure as hell didn't expect the ending. And I think it worked really well as a short story because it had this very abrupt ending. It was a pretty fantastic read, honestly. So out of both of these issues, if you can get your hands on K-Rel's Ring #2, this is the story here, chapter 3. This would be the issue to hunt for, I would say. Yeah. Again, by this point, I was kind of over the fact that I was just reading a secondhand Brandon Graham, and I just kind of got used to that idea and embraced it. So it didn't bother me so much by the time this issue rolled around to read. Yeah, so again, the benefit of digging through bins in some of these places, right? What am I looking for? I'm looking for a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all right here, I think. So one of the other books that he had in his boxes was Sanctuary Part 2, issue #1. I had the 8 other issues from Part 2, but I was just missing issue #1. Man, oh man, is it good to be back. So I've read the first 6 of these. Yeah, first 6 of them. So I've got 3 more to read in Part 2. And then I think I have the first 3 issues of Part 3. So I'll be on the hunt for some more of those. I love this book. It's not dealing with concepts that are outside of, it's not dealing with the idea of politics and business in any sort of subtle way. It's dealing with it very upfront, and I love it. I absolutely love this book. This is such a great read, issue after issue. I love that it kind of falls into some of the manga tropes, like the shot of looking up at someone as they're making this big proclamation about, I only have respect for people that have vision, like these really bold kind of statements from these characters. I love that stuff. I adore the art in this. There's some close-ups in here of people. I should say this is story by Sho Fumimura and art by Ryochi Ikigami. There's some close-ups in here where the use of zipatone on people's faces, as usual, I should have bookmarked. There was 1 or 2 that really stood out to me. The detail was beautiful. The zipatone made their faces look sculpted in a way that really brought a lot of life to the characters. All of the art is outstanding, though. The basic premise of the story, 2 main characters, one who's going to become kind of the head man in the Yakuza, and the other one who's going to become the head man by way of politics. They've now joined forces with some other people. Each of their groups is starting to grow as far as who they have kind of working for them. So the Yakuza now has his fingers in some gangsters that are going to China to try to get help from some Chinese mafia. The politician has now been elected to the LDP, the Democratic Party, as a diet man is what they're called. So now he's kind of formed some friendships with some other radicals that have just been elected to this group. and they're looking to shake it up, of course. So they're making some deals with somebody else who's trying to get into finance. So it talks about how money and banking are hand in hand with politicians, which also equals power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, concepts that we're all very familiar with, but it's handled in a really cool way. And it's also kind of from a perspective of Japan looking to kind of be a stronger voice on the world stage. Yeah, it's really engaging stuff. I really, really dig it. The guy at the comic shop was saying that it's one of his favorite manga as well. And he said it's about time for a reprint of this material. Don't think it's coming anytime soon. He also let me know that there's a movie called Sanctuary as well that he said is worth hunting down if you like the book. So I may see if I can find that. So the other beauty about this era of Viz is each of the issues are really thick. They're easily 2.5 comics each. And then for the last 2 issues, I think those are maybe even, 3.5 comics in each of those. So you get a lot of story here. And it's so good. It's really, really great. Speaking of manga and Drawn and Quarterly, like we were earlier, I think in a couple of weeks, the first book of Legend of Kamui comes out from Drawn and Quarterly. The next one comes out in January, March, April, May, June, July. I think it comes out in July. So they're going to be doing 10 volumes of Kamui, 600 pages each, in a nice kind of, I think they're all soft cover formats. So a nice chunky book. I cannot wait to start digging into that. I'm a big fan of the Kamui stuff that Eclipse put out. What Eclipse put out was just such a small section. If you've been watching this channel for a while, a few years ago when I was reading those, I don't even know how many years ago at this point, quite a few years ago. It was one that I was loving reading every single week. So I'm so excited to kind of get, I think they're publishing the entire Kamui stuff, like everything that ran in Garo magazine. So I think that's where it started, in Garo, which was kind of the alternative underground type of publication that in Japan rather. So I believe Kamui started with Garo #1. I think that might have been one of the driving forces to kind of get that magazine off the ground. It's an amazing story if you don't know it. I'd strongly recommend at least taking a look at it. If you're in the comic shop when it's out, have a flip through it and see what you think. I like that the art isn't as polished. I found the storytelling paced really well. There was some really nice kind of quiet moments of the main characters fishing, for example, or just walking through, admiring the landscapes and things. So some really nice moments like that as well. So I'm very, very excited for that to be coming out. Why don't we start with the bummer of the week when we tackle these last 3? So I'm a big fan of Raphael Grandpa, and motherfucker, did this disappoint me, this 3rd issue. I've been really digging the first 2 issues. There's been such a delay between issue #2 and issue #3 that I've kind of lost the plot. And as I read this one, I got so kind of, angry is maybe a little bit of a dramatic term. I wasn't exactly angry, but I got angry at all of the new characters that were being unfolded, including Kid Joker, which we knew was coming because this cover has been out for quite a long time. And I remember kind of sighing when I first saw the cover. That sigh turned into a very loud groan as I was reading this, because it does feel like the usual bullshit, which is why I don't read the mainstream stuff. You have a story with a very cool writer to then throw a bunch of fucking new characters at the wall to see what sticks. So now this is going to be the origin issue of whatever bullshit characters are going to get a spin-off from this. Like, I was really disappointed. I still love Grandpa's art. I don't know how much of that was his idea or if that was kind of directive from the company themselves. This is Black Label. I don't know if that means anything. I would like to think that it was a little bit of that it was Raphael Grandpa's idea, but then thinking about that is kind of depressing. So I hope he was told by the man to create a bunch of new characters. Whatever the case, I don't know what the backstory is. I just know that I had to sit and read this goddamn thing. The art is beautiful. I think there's only one more issue. I'm going to stick it out for the last issue. I'm also going to go back and reread those first 2 issues. I think this one needs a fair shake to read all 3 together. And there you go. There's the birth of Kid Joker. There you go. $1,000 page right there, people. I can't even believe I'm touching this without gloves on. So I do feel like I want to give it a fair shake and read these 3 issues back to back, because I do think there's something lost between the however many months we've had off between these 2 issues. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. I dip my toes into Marvel and DC stuff, and not all the time, but it just ends up kind of disappointing me to some degree when it comes to like dipping my toes into the superhero world. And it's a bummer. Just bring back Batman the Audio Adventures. If you're listening, I know you're listening. My phone is always listening. Someone somewhere is listening. Just bring that book back, because that was a blast. The stories were fun. The whole thing was lighthearted. The art was beautiful. That's a book I can get behind. If you seriously need my $6.99 or however much the fucking comics are, bring that one, and you've got my $5.99 or $6.99. The final 2 that I've read, read these a little bit ago, so it took me a little bit to kickstart my memory on these. This is Kaya, issue number 23, if you can believe it or not. He's carried on with this stellar issue. The issues took a bit of a dip, pardon me, but this is kind of really working its way back up to what I loved about this book. Again, a very lighthearted read. There's no heavy topics in here or anything. It's just a great adventure story. And also, I was pointing this out to Rasa too. I love this panel because that is such a cartoon character kind of run. So he also balances this. There's a couple of moments where it's a little bit more serious and things. It's not ever overly serious, because you are getting some just colorful monster battles on top of it. But he has this really cool style where he taps into kind of animation, and you can feel the characters moving on the page. The standout part of this one, though, is Kaya kind of being transported or having a vision of the future where she meets who other than herself, and has a little bit of a brief conversation with herself of the future. Really, really nice moment. Really good book. I'm so glad that he's out of his slump. It's just a real joy to read. And then you also get stuff like this too. I mean, look at those pages, man. That's a great layout there. Really nice stuff. So just a fun book. Yeah, I'm really glad that I stuck with it. And I'm really glad to see it going 23 issues. I was skeptical that it was going to get very far, especially when he started making up stories of, for all you floppy readers, I'm going to give you one issue that won't be collected in the trades that he quickly redacted. And then finally, for stuff that I read this week, The Sacrificers. What number is this? This is number 13. This book is overall enjoyable. This one was a bit of a slump for me because it really spelled things out. We know that there's a underlying commentary about power and power structure in this book. Like we all know that. We've literally had gods draining the life force out of people who are basically farmers and just average everyday peons, giving up their firstborn for their gods so the gods can kind of live forever. So it's very, very apparent that this story is about a power dynamic and has kind of a very political underpinning to it. This issue really just decided to spell that out in incredible detail, so much so that it was really off-putting, especially this. The pigeon gets called the cowardly butcher, and then Pigeon's response is, "Funny, coming from you. You're a real man of the people, ? Meet the proletariat," as he jumps across and punches him in the face. So that really, again, this week can be books that made me groan, I guess, because that made me groan a bit out loud when I read that. It's just too heavy-handed. We know that this is the underlying story. I felt it unnecessary to spell it out to this degree here, that we're going to take the power back, and it should be the people that are in the power. All of these things that I truly believe, it's all stuff that I've said here on this channel. And then when I read it in a fucking comic book, it makes me question my very existence. And am I saying anything that's worthwhile to anybody? Because here it is spelled out in a fucking comic book by a pigeon. Anyway, so it's a fun enough series. I was just a little disappointed in this issue. Now, the one thing is that it is Rick Remender, and he has been known to kind of lead you down some garden paths and take some turns. So possibly that's coming up. Again, I'm not dropping this anytime soon. I've really been enjoying this series. So this isn't going anywhere. All I'll say is I can't wait for the final issue of Grommets. I don't know when that's supposed to come out, but out of the Rick Remender books that I'm reading currently, that's the one that has my full attention. I'm loving that book, and I'm very, very curious how that one's going to end. So that's it for what I read. Actually, I guess there was one other thing that I got for Christmas, but I'm not going to talk about it too much. I got the 3rd volume of Blom and read it almost immediately. I think that very same day, or that night anyway, I sat down and read it. Just continues on with being just a bonkers fucking story. I think there's only 5 volumes of this, so I'm almost there. It's just great. I feel like, especially at this point, I'm less concerned about trying to figure things out as I once was. Like, especially in the first book, I think I spent a lot of time trying to get a footing and trying to figure out what I was reading and what this world was and what the message was and what the story was, instead of just letting it kind of happen. So yeah, so in this one, I'm kind of at this point now where I'm just reading the book and I'm just absorbing the pages and looking at these crazy creature designs, and just accepting that I'm in a bit of a hellscape at this point. So a really solid manga. So if you don't know it, it's recommended for sure. And I do like these master editions because they're much bigger than regular manga size. So you're getting something that you can really sink your teeth into. It's the European edition for manga is what it is. Yeah, it's the album-sized manga. So yeah, there you go. Blom number 3. And for my daughter, I got her the Usagi Yojimbo box set, and we read a few stories from this the other night. We could pick up exactly where we left off. Man, oh man, did they do a great job. Surprise, surprise, breaking news. Fantagraphics did a good job publishing a book. I know it's hard to believe, but there you have it. You heard it here first. They're beautiful. It's a beautiful collection. I love all the extras that are in it, especially in book number 2, which I'll show you in a minute. It's all black and white. Just really, really great stuff. So continuing on from, it's basically all of these books plus some extra material. There's 2 short stories at the end of book number 2 with the Ninja Turtles. And then there's a whole bunch of sketches and there's a whole bunch of write-ups and things, character design. We even get early Usagi Yojimbo character design pages, sketches and things, which I'll show you in a sec. But this is so great. She let out a good little squeal when we opened. There's a spot when she opened the book, and kind of right away that very next night, I think we were sitting down, laying in bed to read some of these stories. My wife ended up coming in as well too, and kind of listening in when we were reading the last 2, asking us some questions and saying, "Oh, this looks pretty good. This looks good." It's like, yes, it does. We like cool shit. So it's nice. I think it's nice for her to have this. I hope this is one of those books that sticks with her as she gets older. I was telling Rasa today that I've got a copy of Winnie the Pooh that my dad bought when we were kids, that he passed on to me. I've since bought copies of Winnie the Pooh that I've given to my kids as well, that I kind of remarked on the inside and kind of, wrote that it was to them. So I think some stuff like this, like sharing stories on its own, is so great to do with the kids. But it's also nice to have some stuff that really meant something to both of us, to kind of give to them, that they can kind of carry on. And hopefully, when Lillian has kids, she can sit and read some Usagi with her kids as well, which will actually make me choke up thinking about that. So in the back of this one, what I didn't know about Usagi Yojimbo could fill a couple of books. So bear with me if this is old information. I'm still relatively new to this whole world of Usagi. What I didn't realize was at one time, this was what Usagi Yojimbo was supposed to look like. Usagi Yojimbo started off as a human character and quickly, I think, changed into a rabbit character when Stan Sakai was had an idea of creating this whole universe. I think he had mapped out like 1,200 pages. This Usagi was going to show up on page like 800 and last maybe a couple of hundred pages before getting killed off. So he wrote a little story of that original character and a short story with Usagi. And then, what did he say? 5,000 pages later, I'm still writing about this samurai rabbit. So it's cool to see all of these early sketches of what Usagi was going to look like from the beginning as he's sort of figuring things out. I would love to meet Stan at some point and have him sign these for Lillian. We also get a couple of pages, an early version of the opening pages of Samurai. See page 155 of volume 1 to complete. So a story that happened earlier on, we get a different kind of look at the first couple of pages. The characters are much kind of shorter. So it's around that time, I guess, that he decided to change what Usagi looked like. So as opposed to kind of this shorter chibi kind of figure, he kind of elongated him and elongated a lot of the characters. And then, like I said, we get a couple of Turtles short stories in here, 2 of them, I think. And then after that, what do we get? Oh, yeah, we get a collection of covers. We get some more layouts. But yes, then we get all the cover gallery of the Fantagraphics books. And at the very end, we do get an interview with Stan Sakai that takes place in, I don't know what year this took place. I want to say the 90s, but I'm not sure. I don't remember where I read it. Somewhere it said 1995 is when it took place. So kind of nice. Haven't dug into it, but I'm sure that'll be eye-opening to hear what he has to say about things at that time. So beautiful, beautiful set. Love reading these. Just before Christmas, speaking of the Fantagraphics volumes, just before Christmas, I was doing another look on eBay for the couple of volumes that I'm missing. I'm missing books number 4 and 5. And wouldn't you know it, there was a whole collection, all 7 books, from a Canadian seller that had a very low bid on it. So it was an actual auction. It wasn't a buy it now. And I threw in what I thought was an obscenely low amount of money. I think it was $70, so basically like $10 a book, and figured there's no way in hell I'm going to get all 7 volumes of the Fantagraphics stuff. It wasn't all first printings. I don't know what the printings were. There's no way I'm going to win this, and wouldn't you know it, I won it. So that's on its way to me, which I'm incredibly excited about, to have all of those books. So she's got her collection of them. I'll have my kind of soft cover Fantagraphics collections. Just a really good score. For some reason, books 4 and 5 were always really expensive. I'm assuming that meant that the print run of those Fantagraphics collected editions were much lower than other ones. I don't know what era these would have been published in, what year they were published in, but maybe that was during some of their more financially struggling times. I would have thought that something like Usagi would be a cash cow for them no matter when, but obviously that's maybe not the case. So I don't know why those 2 volumes are so expensive, but I think for volume 5, I was seeing it at about $40 Canadian on average, just for that one book. So to be able to grab all 7 of them for that cheap is great. So I can't wait for those to get in and kind of keep reading those myself. it's nice to read the hardcover, but there's something about these smaller kind of soft cover volumes that I really dig. So yeah. And I think that's it. 2025, holy shit. So I'm gonna get another book. I'll probably end up doing the same thing I've been doing the last few years. I've got 3 books now. This first one isn't complete though. I was still doing it on Twitter for this one, so I had gone back to those original tweets and got a couple of hundred of them in this book. I would love to eventually tackle my videos from that era and see if I can complete that book, because it is nice to have the physical copies of these things here. Thanks very much for tuning in all of this year and kind of beyond. I hope everybody had a great holiday season, and come and hang out with us next Sunday when we kind of go over what we read this year and see kind of what the highlights were. So right on, everybody. Thanks very much for hanging out for the hour, and we'll talk to you. Laters.